How many threads do y'all's CPUs have offhand? Do you know?
I think mine is 12. I think I'm 6 cores, 12 threads. I think.
I have 6 cores, 12 logical processors. Uh, 2600 threads is what it's running right now.
Oh,
What?
that seems really.
Should be a
Windows Task
small number.
Manager. Task Manager gives you the information.
2600 sounds ridiculously high. It's
Yeah.
usually like 6 or 12.
Well, they get up. I think they get up to like the high 20s or something, but that's with like a
Right.
12 core.
Usually like one,
Okay.
2, or 4 per CPU or per core.
Yeah.
I mean,
The threads, 2700 threads. So I'm not sure what you're necessarily referring to, but I've got 6 cores, 12 processors, 12 logical processors.
Yeah,
and it literally
probably
says
that's
threads
probably the cores,
2700.
because that 6 cores, 12 threads seems normal to me. Like that would be.
Well, yeah, it's an i7, you know.
i7.
Mhm.
I mean, even then it varies. Do you know what it is offhand? 8700.
I can find out.
And I mean, it's not a huge deal. It's probably 6 or 12 threads. So I don't know. I thought that might have something to do with it if it was like limited on the number of threads, but I don't know. I
The
certainly have
8700 series.
8700, so 12
Yeah,
threads, 3.7 gigahertz base frequency.
essentially.
Cool. So yeah, no, not what I was thinking.
Yeah. See, mine. What I'm using right now is a Ryzen 5 3600 TX. So the TX, like, all it does is like the max, like speed it can output. I think, or it can be clocked to like 4.2 gigs instead of the 3.6 or whatever that the standard chip is supposed to be. But its base clock is 3.6 and it's 6 core 12 thread. So
So that must be mine's a 6 core 12 thread also then.
yeah,
What that must be.
right. But that I think that has like why they say that like for independent like processes like doing like kind of one major thing at a time, uh, the Intel chips are fine. I mean, they're really good at that. But as far as like doing multiple like heavy processes or whatever, or like programs use, that's why that I think the AMDs are. They say that they're better because I mean, if the what is it? The
They tend
Ryzen
to have
7
more
has far more cores than mine does.
and threads, I think, on
Yeah.
average.
Oh yeah, yeah. The cores kind of correspond to. If it's got more cores, it's gonna have more threads.
Yeah, because like each core has to have at least one thread, pretty much. But
Yeah.
some can have 2 per core, some can have 4 per core.
Right. Like if we just do.
So I when I quickly like skimmed through the video towards the end, it didn't sound like we had talked about the battery stuff on recording.
Good.
Okay.
So we could
Yes.
just try to.
We
This
could start there then.
the Ryzen 7 is an 8 core. Let's see how many threads it has. But that also starts at a 3.6 to where isn't the i7 like a 3.9 or something?
He was saying it's supposed to be a 3.4, I think, but mine's only a 3.19.
Oh, oh, okay, so 1.9. That's what I probably got that screwed up there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find trying to find the thread count for the Ryzen 7 3800 TX or XT. Sorry. Wow.
16.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense. Although, I mean, 8, yeah, 8 and 16, right. So twice the amount, yeah, okay. Yeah, it's just like 6 and 12, so yeah, that's pretty much how they do. So then, the Ryzen 9, being a 12 core, would be 24 threads. And then I think the 50, this is the last gen, the 3900 series. So I'm pretty sure that the 5900s are even more. I don't know if they have it. Oh, they have HX for it, maybe. No, it still says it's 12 core. So. Oh, there it is. Okay, so they have the 5950X is a 16 core, which I believe is probably the best one that they make, the Ryzen 9. So, but that's $1,000 processor.
Big money.
Yeah. But I mean, even the
Well,
what is it? The 5900X 12 core Ryzen 9. That one is like just under $700. It's like even last gen stuff that's pretty much the same. Like, I mean, I can't say that they're the same. Obviously, I mean, something's got to be better about them. But the 3900 XT is still 12 core, 24 thread, and I believe it's still at the same hertz rating, like 3.4, 3.9. So, but they're only like $400 something. So I don't know, whatever. Quick browse of Newegg. Anyway, so yeah, batteries. Do we want to go there?
Yeah, sure. So, I guess we'll start off with the mention of the aluminum ion batteries. Whoever has heard about them. Apparently, they're fairly new, and some new testing has been done, and apparently they charge like 10 times faster than lithium ions. They last longer. They don't require a cooling system. They just don't have the same power density as like a lithium ion would, basically. So you'd need a bigger battery to equate to the same amount of power.
So more space then, or?
Basically, yeah.
But
So
then,
whereas like a lithium ion battery powered car has a bank of batteries and a cooling system to keep those batteries cool. Whereas a one powered by these aluminum batteries, they wouldn't need a cooling system at all. So the space that you would save with that would be taken up by batteries, by more batteries, basically. So you end up getting the same amount of power, but no cooling system.
and the
Anyway.
idea is that those kind of even out to some degree. So there's no, hopefully, not as much of a loss
Give me
of
1 second.
energy. Mm-hmm.
All right. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, it's all good. So the idea that basically what you're saying is because there's no cooling system, you can put more batteries in, say, like a Tesla car. So with one battery being the exact same size and weight as a lithium ion, you're not going to go as far in a car. You're just not. But if you get rid of the cooling system's weight and then add in more batteries equal to that weight, it'll get at least closer to that you know,
Yeah,
total distance that a car could travel.
exactly. And I
Um,
don't know the exact specifics of it, obviously, but on what the weight to power ratio is and whether the cooling system weighs more than the batteries you'd need to equate the same amount of power, not exactly sure. But the idea is exactly that, though. You get rid of the cooling system and the weight for it, which is one less system to maintain also in a vehicle, and you just add more batteries in instead, which is something that you already have to deal with anyways in the car. So it's
cooling
not
system
adding
takes
anything.
power itself.
It does too, in one way, shape,
So,
or form.
So, is there any hope
Then,
of these aluminum batteries getting near the power output for the same size as a lithium ion right now in the future?
well, I think it's because of the natural density differences of the materials you're using, you won't get the same kind of power output from the same density of the material. You know what I'm saying?
can,
So you would need a
did,
bigger set, I believe.
did you look at all into like the actual structure of the battery,
I have
like
not.
what
I
it's
mean,
made out of?
that does again vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. So how
Well,
they
but
put the
the
batteries together is going to differ. The general science,
so
you're right, should be the same between processes, but
well, I want to go kind of back to what you said, saying that this is a new thing, and the company that you had sent when for the article that's talking about this, uh,
mhm, Australian
it
company or
did.
whatever.
Yeah, the Australian GMG Graphene Manufacturing Group is the name of the company, and they developed this battery. But I was doing some, you know, research, some YouTube research, and I found a Young Turks video from like 2015 or something talking about an aluminum ion battery. It was being done in a research lab, um, and it was the same idea, but what they did was they just used graphite as the cathode, and then like an aluminum foil as the anode, and then use like uh, what's it called, a an electrolyte solution to power that, just like salt water.
Mhm.
Um, and this is basically that same idea. The name of the company kind of hints at what they're doing. It's graphene, which is,
Yeah.
you know, as you guys maybe know, graphene is a very special form of graphite. It's a form of carbon that forms these hexagonal,
Mhm.
flat planar sheets. And this brings up a big issue that popped up in my mind when I noticed that this is really cool. And I love that it uses aluminum because lithium is way harder to find and mine and purify in the Earth's crust. Aluminum is fucking everywhere. So that would be amazing if we came up with an aluminum ion solution. But the fact that they have to use graphene is a real hurdle because something as far as I understand, even still, it's really hard to mass produce graphene
Very delicate.
reliably
Yeah.
and really expensive. $100 a gram was like something I was seeing. So that
But the thing is,
immediately would
if
make
they're already doing it for a lithium battery, wouldn't it just be the same process for a switch off from lithium
the
to?
cathode. The cathode is not a graphene one in lithium. It's a different process. I don't remember exactly what the materials are in lithium ion, but they don't have to use sheets of graphene, from what I am aware.
Okay.
I forget what the materials are though. Um, but yeah, like it is really cool that it can charge 10 times faster. It uses materials that are way, more accessible to us. But with batteries, man, this is something that kind of comes up every so many years. Like people claim to have this big breakthrough in battery technology that we all need. And then it never really pans out because there's some caveat, even if what they're saying is true, which in this case it is. Except what they are also saying is that they found a way to mass produce it. that's where I take a huge issue. Like, I'm really skeptical. They're not saying how they figured it out. That's a revolutionary thing, if they figured out how to mass produce graphene that could have, huge repercussions for more than just batteries. So if they
Yeah.
know how to do that, please let us know. You know,
No, they're
the
keeping it
world could
secret
use
for
it.
now.
Yeah, yeah. Which, like,
I mean, there could be a lot
yeah,
of widespread implications for these batteries and what they would represent for their manufacturing and other manufacturing and stuff. So pretty interesting. And it's pretty cool to know that you found like an article when they were researching it back that many years ago, and to kind of tie that into how the progress has come, you know?
yeah. It shows how, like, these things don't happen in, like, big leaps and bounds of, like, oh, there's this new battery technology that's going to change the game. It's like, really, it's much more incremental than that. And we kind of just get what looks like these big, huge discoveries. But no, it's little incremental discoveries all along the way that get us to where we are. Um, yeah, really cool stuff. And I think we will one day not be relying fully on lithium ion batteries because it's a sustainability problem. You know?
Hmm.
So how does this go to environmental concerns with the disposal of these batteries? Is it looking like the same as the lithium ions right now, or
Well,
With
I
that. I
think,
do
think
we know?
what I have read was basically that they are less environmentally impactful than lithium is. I mean,
yeah,
again,
exactly,
that's
because of the
that's really the
aluminum.
whole exactly. That's the whole idea is that it uses a much more abundant, much safer material to use to make batteries than our current, and it has a comparable amount of power, charge capability, that kind of thing, to where it's not just something that's, fantasy world making it a battery. It's something that's realistic in making it a battery for multiple different
Yeah.
reasons.
Now, I saw one issue with this as well. Assuming that we did get these things and they became the norm. Let's say all Teslas were now made with aluminum ion batteries instead, and they figured out how to make it work just fine. There becomes another scaling issue, not with the production of graphene, but instead with the distribution of the power through the grid. I saw one person do a Fermi estimate, as we talked about last week, that there was basically one car would be about 2.5 megawatts of output to charge, like plug in. That's how much it would be feeding to the car to give this fast charging capability. Uh, an average coal-fired power plant gives off about 600 megawatts at an average load. And so that means if you had 240 cars or so all plugged in at the same time onto one power grid doing the same thing, they would be taking up all the power from that power station.
Now that's a problem.
240 cars, which is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, when you
So we
think
would
about how
need
large a
way and
power grid is, that's almost nothing.
yeah, like these things would take a lot of power, and we would have to be able to scale up our power distribution and or storage on a system-wide kind of approach.
But then
Sorry,
again,
I may
that's
have missed
Which
something doing a little bit of reading. Are we talking about using
so
the aluminum ion batteries?
yeah, let's say that aluminum ion batteries are in all Teslas. Basically, it would only take 240 cars to overload a single coal-fired power plant. So then that becomes an issue because there's going to be many more cars than that possibly, and also other people using power for other reasons that uh, you would need to increase the amount of energy you're producing at these power plants just to provide these higher outputs of power so that you have that power on tap to be able to fastly, wow, whatever, quickly, sorry, quickly charge your car. Uh, yeah, it
so.
would
What is a
it would
nuclear
overload
power
the
plant
system.
output?
I don't know. That's a good
Say that
question,
again.
and it probably varies on the type
Say
of
it again.
plant.
Say what again, Joe?
What's the output of a nuclear
Yeah.
power plant?
The other
One
thing I wanted,
gigawatt. So twice the amount of a coal-fired power plant. So that still only takes us to 500 aluminum ion powered cars.
Right, but then you're getting rid of all coal power plants at that point, and then scaling down the size of the power grid itself for one particular nuclear power plant to possibly just be able to cover something like this. And
I mean, I'm all for switching over to nuclear. I think it's safer
oh
and
yeah,
better, but as far as pure energy output, it's not it doesn't solve the problem of having orders of magnitude higher energy output that you would need to make the faster charging capability even worth it or feasible. You need to basically have the plants outputting more energy too.
so what you were saying was right though. You're not. It's not like you're gonna have this drain on the grid all the time though. So you do other methods to help compensate, like you uh, create more storage capacity for the grid. You use the ultra capacitors that we have now to store and charge fast and stuff like that, so that you have that ability and capacity to be able to meet that demand when or should it arise. I mean, because
Yeah.
even right now with lithium ion batteries, how are we not exactly overloading the grid? Is it just because they charge slower? I mean, I'm not
Yeah,
exactly
yeah, they
following.
don't have
exactly.
that kick. They
Yeah.
don't need that kick to do the fast
10 if
charge.
yeah, 10 times faster charging means you're getting pulling 10 times more energy away from the power plant. Um, and apparently, some rough back of the envelope calculations means that if there were more than a couple hundred cars plugged in at one time, then they would need to overload the power plants or get more energy from them just to be able to provide these cars. Even if it wasn't cars, if it was phones, then that's thousands of phones that are going to be fast charging that you're going to run into the same issue that faster charging is great. It's convenient for all of us and it sounds great and I love the idea. But then when you think of that energy has to come from somewhere and the power plants aren't really set up to provide it. And all grid storage, all for it. We don't do enough of it. There's not enough efforts at grid storage. If in some places there is none, in most places there
Mm-hmm.
is no grid storage. There's no like backup solution if there are brownouts and stuff. Uh,
Yeah,
so
I
that's
agree.
a big infrastructure issue that could help, make something like this more feasible. But if all these cars were to change tomorrow to aluminum ion, we'd be kind of screwed probably because all those
I mean, it'd
rich
be
people with their
interesting to
Teslas.
see how it would work. I'm curious to see if we'd really be that at risk. I mean, I'm not saying
Well,
we wouldn't. I'm just saying it'd be
just
interesting to see.
just the math suggests if there is enough of it out there that it would. So
Yeah, if there's more than a few dozen people in a city that have these aluminum ion chargers, then they would need special charging stations, which is, that's basically probably another solution is you'd need your charging stations to have all kinds of, electronics and stuff at the stations, which is a whole infrastructure thing itself. You if you're not going to increase the power plants, then you need to store a shit ton of that energy and have it ready to go. And that's expensive. Like that I
you're
think
gonna
that's a
have
big
the
inhibitory factor.
aluminum ion batteries charging aluminum ion batteries.
Well, I mean, that's exactly my kind of thought, though. You have the charging stations with, say, solar panels, a grid hookup, everything that you would normally do to try and help create energy and store energy. And you have these aluminum ion battery packs at the charging stations. So when somebody is connecting one of these, the charge discharge feature is being compensated by, a storage system.
Well, you put enough
Yeah.
in at the site to charge. I mean, if everything in a perfect world, if every vehicle using aluminum ion batteries, if it did, uh, was the same size battery and held the same whatever, so you put that amount at a charging station, let them hook it up, do it real fast, and then have like a, I don't know, some type of like step down thing so it can trickle back while it's not being used. It wouldn't have to fast charge the battery packs at the station.
Exactly. Only during crunch time would it have to do something like that. Otherwise, it could use like solar power charging to charge the battery pack. There's nothing saying that you necessarily have to drain the grid. And again, you were saying that you agree that we need more
Yeah, if nothing else was in
storage
place, it would
structure.
happen.
But yeah, I mean, that's the solution to that is to have the storage on hand. And that's really the only solution to something like that if that's the problem.
And frankly, that's a solution to other problems that are probably more significant than just the I want faster charging problem. It's also like we have issues with electrical grid outages and stuff, and people, that's a medical risk for a lot of people, and we really should. It's a safety hazard to not have these kinds of backups. There's a whole bunch of incentives to sort of start putting these kinds of things into our power infrastructure. And I feel like
Yeah,
by
maybe
2021, we should be doing these things much more commonly.
maybe hospitals and grocery stores won't have to have their own generators.
I mean, I don't necessarily think that's a bad
Or
step
that's
either. The whole thing, kind of just like with security of stuff, the whole thing is the more layers that you have to go through before you're down, the better.
yeah,
You know?
redundancies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
backups.
So
So
I don't ever see generators going away from hospitals, but
and I don't think there's really any need to because other than the upkeep, I mean, if they're less they're being used, what's the big deal? They're already there. So the other thing that could solve it is every city in the entire United States gets its own nuclear power plant. I mean, that would solve it, right?
but that's not a. No, because it only takes the total number of cars you could provide the power for from 240 to 480, like, or really 450. Like, it only goes from 600 megawatts to 1 gigawatt. So twice the power output from a nuclear power plant than a coal-fired power plant. But that only takes us from 240 to like 450 cars.
But
It's
instead
not.
of having
That's
like
not enough
big
for a whole
widespread
city.
power grids, you'd have. Well, it depends on what city. I'm talking about like where I live. I mean, I don't think there's that many electric cars running around where I live right now anyway. But so
Well, that's a number that's a moving target, right? That's kind of probably increasing every year, everywhere. But
I don't see that changing anytime soon.
yeah, slow, gradual changes over time, right?
if anything, it's going to accelerate to a more electronic-driven society rather than a fuel-driven society.
Wasn't that just kind of how tech goes? I mean, like we're onto something, we rapidly advance it, and then we hit like a stalemate, and then it takes a while to figure out how to push past what got us stuck, and then it's all of a sudden rapid advancement again, and then we hit another stalemate. So
Yeah.
I think it really depends. Like, I feel like it maybe looks like that to us, uh, as like non experts in all these fields, and how we get them kind of fed to us via the media. It seems like they're like these big capitulated outputs of discoveries, but they're more like gradual discoveries the whole time over many years that are under our radars. And so it seems capitulated, but it's really a smooth gradual increase over time. That's
The
what I
whole
would
thing
argue.
about discovery is it's not a one and done kind of thing. Sometimes you need to know this piece, and then sometimes you need to know this piece, and then this piece, and then you need to put them all together to get something out of it. You know, it's not just as one subject is going to lead us to the question, the ultimate answer, or whatever. We have to know everything to make things work, to figure out how to get around these barriers.
but if it wasn't for like hitting a wall in new technologies, I mean, why else would we deviate paths so much as we do and try to, okay, well, this is what about this? Why don't we try to find an alternative for that or this? I don't know.
Yeah.
I just think it's kind of like human nature to like, this is working, so let's just go with this. I mean, yeah, there are people that try to go different ways, but I think for the most part, we're just kind of, this is working, so we're just gonna fast track this because it's working.
Yeah. Yeah, there's all kinds of like old technologies that are still in place in critical places. This
Yeah.
kind of harkens back to last week's episode about security, where like power grid infrastructure, well, they often aren't built with the security, the digital security in mind. At least not on some of their stuff on the floor, on the concrete floors, as they say, like the operational technology. The IT might be secure, but some of the actual machinery might not be.
Mhm.
And there we go.
I mean, firewalls can only work as well as they're designed, but once you get past the firewall, if there's no other security, then
That it's
Yeah,
field
there
day.
was a firewall in Notre Dame, like an actual firewall in Notre Dame, and we know what happened with that.
that's where it comes from. That's where the
Actually,
terminology actually comes from, though.
we don't know what happened yet, do we? It's just like speculation. We think there's like some cigarette butt or something, but they never actually found out the source of the fire, right? For Notre Dame. Am I correct
I don't believe so.
in that?
I don't know for sure.
Crazy stuff.
How's everyone doing?
Yeah.
Welcome to Technically Incorrect. I am Rob. This is Joe. And this is Scott. And this is the podcast where we talk about random stuff that literally just interests us. And if it interests you too, cool. Welcome. What else did we have? Where's the other article? Oh. So this breaking light
Don't forget to
speed.
like, comment, and subscribe.
We say that at the end.
No, you gotta say it at the beginning so that they know that they need to like it right now.
Okay. Yep. Before we even finish talking, you need to go and click on that like button right now. That way you can just go about your day and you won't have to watch the rest of this, right?
That way, when you quit and don't watch the rest.
We've already stated that.
We've got
Okay.
what we needed from you. Just hit the like button.
So, speed of
Uh,
light, yeah.
Speed of light, yeah. What is the speed of light? Anyone know?
I know it starts with a 3, right?
It does start with a 3.
I mean, it's a
I mean,
constant.
it
doesn't
depends on the
And
it depends on the units, right? And technically,
if
it starts
you're
with
talking
a
about
2.
kilometers, wasn't it like
yeah, I guess it does depend on the
3,000
unit.
kilometers? But
You 300,000 meters per second, or or 299,792,458 meters per second, if you want to be technical. So
it's just under 100.
What does that mean,
190,000
though? Like-
miles, something like that.
Oh yeah, it says right here in the article.
184,
300,000 miles, 186,000 miles a second.
which is like crazy, mind blowing.
Yes, it's very very fast. It's very fast.
So who wants to kick us off with this? What did we find? What did these researchers find at the Lawrence
idea,
Livermore National Laboratory?
yeah, the idea is that they've played with slowing down light by cooling down atoms and stuff and prisms and all that good stuff. But I guess they hadn't really messed with speeding up light by heating material, if you will, because you figure a vacuum is supposedly empty, so when light goes through it, it's going to travel fast, right? As fast as it can. Well, apparently through hot plasma, it seems to speed up. I guess it lubricates the light, if you will, and it actually seems to move faster, from what I'm understanding.
Not exactly. Like, basically, what they did was they had a bunch of hot plasma, like you were saying, of helium and hydrogen, and they sent a beam of light through that, but it wasn't the actual light itself that traveled faster than the speed of light. No photons in that process actually went superluminal or above the speed of light. what happened was there's something called this. We kind of need to cover the phase velocity versus the group velocity, and basically, the group velocity is what appeared to go faster than the speed of light, but the phase velocity did not. So no information was actually able to travel faster than the speed of light. Does that make sense?
Real versus
I
perceived.
don't know enough about it, but I mean, I honestly don't know enough about light, I guess, if you will, to really follow that. But I think I get the idea.
Basically, can I share my screen?
Yeah.
See if I can get this to work.
Let's go to school.
Yeah. So, can y'all
There it goes.
see that as it
Oh,
slowly loads?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess not.
did you select a screen for the display?
I did.
Because yeah, it's certainly not coming up.
If I pull it up, does that work? No. Okay.
No.
Well, we are experiencing technical difficulties with that. I wish I could show that to you guys because the visual is really helpful here. But basically, the idea is a group of like
Scott,
a group
real quick,
of
was
waves.
Was it a
Sorry.
graph? Or was it like a picture?
It was a
thing,
GIF.
Or is it a? Okay. Put it in
It's a
Discord.
GIF. It's like okay.
Drop it in Discord.
Instead of trying to share your application, share the screen that it's on. Maybe that would help.
That's what I did. I did share the screen. I mean, we could also. I mean, you could look up the Wikipedia yourselves for group velocity.
Blaze, did you have it
And
up? Can you post the
It's one of
URL?
the images there. Yeah. Mm,
Is that what we're looking
Alright.
for?
Perfect. Yeah, so if you look at the third one down on the right, that dark blue line, do y'all see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, exactly. So if you look, you see what looks like a big envelope with all the little tiny squiggles inside of it. Basically, how you get this is if you add up a bunch of waveforms that are all like sinusoidal waves. If you added those up, if they were in a certain layout, you would get something that looks like this. And this is an instance where the phase velocity or the phases are moving in the negative direction. So if you've tried to follow any one of these peaks that's like getting taller and shorter, it's actually moving to the left.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see the group, the envelope around it is actually moving to the right.
To the right, yeah. I was gonna say it's doing funky things to my eyes
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
really
it
is
can
an
be a little
optical
bit,
illusion,
yeah,
It's like the longer I stare
it's a
at it,
bit
it keeps
trippy,
changing direction.
but I don't like that they have the phase velocity in the negative direction here because really the phase velocity is positive. You know, you're moving from one direction to another, so the phase velocity would be positive. And in this case, since the phase velocity is one way, the group velocity is negative in relation to that. And so that's essentially what's happening here is it's really a bunch of frequencies kind of all combined and they create this envelope called the group velocity. And usually the group velocity travels at the same speed as what's called the signal velocity, but in weird materials, such as a hot plasma, that doesn't hold true. Um, and so you can get weird instances like this where the group velocity might even be negative in relation to the phase velocity, and so it gives this apparent effect that something traveled faster than light. Like basically part of the signal got to the detector before the expected part got there by a specific amount. And even though they got some amount of detection that was seemingly superluminal, there's not enough to get a signal from that. You need a full waveform to kind of go through. You need at least the middle part of like the wave to get through the detector to be able to say, is that bit supposed to be a 1 or a 0? Can we get information from that? And you can't do that with just a little bit. And that's basically what's happening here is a little bit's reaching the detector first. And you can detect a little bit of increase in the voltage there a little bit sooner than you'd expect because the group velocity is changing.
So basically, they thought
the
they were
way
onto
they kind of
something,
did,
right?
I think what it is it's a sensational thing because it sounds like something broke physics, but it didn't really. This is something that, like, it comes up every now and again too. These are like recurring things that they've studied these things inside, like Joe was pointing out, they've studied it in cold gases. The new thing here is that they specifically studied it in a hot plasma and saw that there was this interesting effect between the phase velocities and the group velocity. But does that imply that faster than light travel is possible?
Not necessarily.
No, it doesn't. Because no thing in this case actually went faster than the speed of light.
Yeah, basically,
So,
physics
like,
said
an
It
example
appears
that
to. It's
often,
an optical illusion.
yeah, exactly. It's not a real thing. Something that it's often compared to is a shadow. Like if you shine a flashlight to the moon and stick your thumb in front of it and then jiggle it around, well, because of how geometry works, the points of light versus shadow you cast on the moon, well, that shadow might look like it moved around faster than the speed of light, so that like there could be if someone was on the 2 points of the moon, they couldn't let somebody know quick enough that it was going to be dark, like a signal couldn't reach those points fast enough, but no photons traveled faster than the speed of light. The shadow did. So it's really the absence of the photons that gave the apparent effect that something traveled faster than light. But
Maybe you're on
really, it was
something. Maybe we
nothing. It
shouldn't be
was
looking at
no.
how fast light travels. Maybe we should be looking at how fast darkness travels.
I mean, but then what is darkness?
here we go.
Well, the Darkness is a band from the early
Quantify that yet, have
2000s
we?
that wrote the song "I Believe in a Thing Called Love." That's the Darkness. um,
Yeah.
Sorry, did you have a serious question there that I
Let's just-
interrupted?
Did Joe have a serious question?
No.
And there you go.
So if we want that segue, then so if we still figure we can't travel faster than the speed of light, right? So
Yeah,
next
that was
best
really
thing
good
is
there.
what?
We kind of broke off it there, but yeah, nice job, Scott. Nice job.
So the
I
next
mean,
best thing for space
like,
travel is what?
obviously this is not the way to travel in time.
So we're talking
So,
about time travel.
what is our only option left?
To the moon, Alice. No, we've already been there, or not, depending on what you believe.
We are planning to go back, apparently. I
Yeah.
think there is a trip scheduled 2024 or something like that.
Is that before or after the asteroid kills us?
Launch date 2023. Yeah, a moon project.
Yeah.
What asteroid?
Wasn't there like a huge asteroid moving toward us that they were worried about for some
There's
reason?
been a few, but
There's been there's been a few.
Okay.
Which one?
I try not to follow this stuff
Um,
because I don't really care if I'm gonna die, I don't want to know about it. Just fucking kill me. So
yeah. Yeah, that's a real hazard, a real issue is the tiny meteorites that are big enough to be world enders that we can't really detect. Uh, but yeah, apparently this faster than light plasma, not really faster than light, not really a way to travel into the future. But apparently there's something called an Alcubierre drive. Have you guys heard of this Alcubierre drive?
no, I have not.
Uh, it's apparently the only hope we have left for being able to travel uh, back in time or time travel, I guess. But I mean, we all are time travelers anyway, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say so. There's actually
I'm
hope for
traveling
time
through time
travel
right
now,
now.
but exactly, yeah. We do it
Well,
every
there's
day.
nothing in the laws of physics to prevent it per se, but
Yeah, but this Alcubierre drive, basically the idea is that it creates a region of compactified space in front of the spaceship and then expands space behind the spaceship. So you create this kind of like almost like a ball rolling downhill kind of effect where it's going to want to tend towards the shorter space and be pushed away by the expanding space. But the space in between there is actually kept flat. Um, so there's like extreme curvature in this bubble around the ship, basically, and that's what we call the warp bubble, right? Uh, and that's the idea behind how this works. But how do you get enough energy to contract space enough? And how the fuck do you expand space? Do you guys know? Do you guys have any
this is the
guesses?
problem. No, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know math. No, hell no.
No,
How do
but
you
like
expand
basically
space? Can
you
you heat it
can.
up like liquid?
Uh,
Well, how do you compactify it?
You freeze it.
It's
You
How do
cool
you
it down.
compactify
make
space?
it cold. You make space cold, and then it condenses, and then you
But
heat up space, and
but
it makes.
I mean that's a good guess. But space is already
Wasn't really a guess.
pretty low, energy. No, it is. It is. Basically, you compactify space by having a bunch of matter. Like the area around a black hole is bending space-time in such a way that it's shortening space close to the black hole. A similar thing happens if you were to travel near the speed of light. There's something that happens called length contraction. And so if you travel at the speed of light or close to it, your length is going to decrease. Um, and
Ah,
so
so
the
that's why
opposite
in
of
Star
that
Trek
space
when they
contraction would
jump,
be
when they would jump into like the warp thing or whatever, how the ship would always elongate when they jumped. Is that why?
some of that could be like trippy trailing effect technically, like just
Effective, yeah. You just
don't-
look that way.
I don't think
not
they were
the
thinking
way-
about
Because-
that when that shit
because-
was made.
well, because what you're saying is length expansion, but what actually happens is length contraction. Um, but time itself expands. That's why time travels slower as you're traveling faster than the speed of light. Time itself is expanding. So space is shrinking while time is expanding. But so that's how you contract space. To expand space, you need something called negative mass. Negative mass. Negative energy at the very least, but you would need matter that is negative matter.
Is that the ether that was
So-
in the Thor movie? Is that the antimatter? It was
The
antimatter,
ether?
Never mind. Yeah, and
Yeah, antimatter is technically different.
yeah.
Yeah, it is technically different. Antimatter is opposite electrical charge, so it's like a positron is the positive version of an electron, and that's antimatter. But that's not what we need here. We need negative matter, which is like a different thing. Like if you were to try to weigh it, it would have a negative weight to it.
Take weight off.
It would
the
do all
scale,
kinds
yeah.
of weird physical things.
Antigrav.
Something. It would never been observed. Yeah, it's never really been observed or created. You need this kind of exotic matter to do so. There have been some people that have proposed that you could do it with normal matter, but the estimates end up involving masses hundreds of times the mass of Jupiter. So you
It
need
started out being the
hundreds of
entire
Jupiters.
universe, and then the guy got it worked down to where, okay, now all we need is the mass of a sun.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Well, we have one of those.
And imagine all the we got one of those.
Yeah, we got one of those.
We only kind of need it for survival, but you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
so we
that
should
was
go
the-
to
that was
Alpha
the,
Centauri, use that star.
Yeah.
Literally use the star's mass, but then you're never coming back, I guess, right? I mean, does it consume the matter?
Yeah.
You take it with you? I mean,
Well, what
Yeah,
was
you
the-
bring up an interesting point. Like you're kind of yes to both. You are using the matter, and some of it is moving with you. So it kind of means that some of this negative energy would have maybe traveled faster than the speed of light, and that kind of violates causation. Yeah. Some people have proposed that like if you used dark matter or something or dark energy or something like that, that it would help, but I want to know where they're getting that from because we don't even know what those things
That's what I
are
was gonna say,
really, and
what
they could
is
just
dark
be
energy? Like,
some
what is that?
hidden form of ordinary matter. Well, dark energy is the observation that galaxies are moving away faster than we expect them to.
the expansion.
So it's not a thing we haven't.
Okay, that
just-
I know. That I've heard of.
It's based on the expansion of the universe. It's more based on the inflation, like which is the exponential expansion of the universe. And why is it that exponential tendency? Why are these galaxies? What's driving them apart? It seems like a force is pushing them apart, not just gravity, and that is called dark energy. We don't really know what it is, so that's why it's dark. Crazy stuff.
Yeah. The what is it? I just found the whole thing you were talking about with the needing like the mass of the sun or whatever that
Mhm.
that Chris whoever guy. Just found that. I'm trying to
Yeah, and-
follow this as we go.
People have suggested that that it could be as small as like something the weight of like a car or a truck as far as energy goes. But I don't buy that. Like build it then, then we'll talk. Build something that contracts space. Build something that fucking expands space, then we'll talk, that's never been done. It's just kind of conceived of. The conception is interesting because general relativity, the equations work forward and backward. General relativity is like the stronger of the relativity theories, and it apparently can be ran forwards and backwards in time, and the equations still make sense. All of physics still makes sense under the lens of general relativity.
Yeah.
The trick is when you try to throw in quantum mechanics into that, then it probably doesn't go both directions in time. We have like entropy and things like that.
I don't know. I still think that the only way we're going to get people anywhere out of this solar system is to freeze them and put them on a ship and say good luck.
I like
You're-
to
you're
have
never
higher
coming
hopes
back.
than that, but apparently at the end of the article that I found, Eric Lenz is one of the guy's names who has supposedly found a way to do it by altering the space-time within the bubble, within that warp bubble, by a certain way, and you don't have to use negative energy to do it, and it allows the bubble to travel faster than the speed of light, supposedly. Again, mathematical models, not theoretical proof, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, because there becomes hosts of problems with even the thickness of the wall of the warp bubble, because there's weird issues that arise with that and how the negative energy could be traveling superluminally. because what you're saying is basically the Alcubierre drive, it creates a bubble so that the inside is flat, so that basically nothing inside of it is actually traveling faster than the speed of light, is the idea. So it, in that case, doesn't break causality. But then there become these kind of edge cases, literally, on like where the warp bubble happens, where we don't really know what's going to happen there. And I want to know how this guy's going to do it. Like, this guy says he figured it out mathematically, and I'm sure the mathematics is really fucking complicated.
Yeah.
But like, if you can't convince me that it's even possible that we could expand space realistically, then my hopes are shot.
Well, see, what I want to know.
Apparently,
I
that's
would
part of
love
what his
this.
book does, though. So
What I want to know is what happens when this bubble you're talking about, like with a water bubble, what happens when someone pops it? Does like the flat space inside now become like faster than light travel, and we all just atomically dissolve into particles? I mean, is that a thing?
I mean, it's not so much. I mean,
I
it's
think-
not like a bubble, like a film of water around you. It is like a bubble of energy.
energy,
Like
yeah, more like
free
an
energy
electronic
kind of.
shield, if you will,
Right.
which we haven't gotten down yet either. So
Kind of, sort of, but it's more like a shield of negative energy, really. Yeah, I don't know. It's really complicated, and I
Yeah.
frankly, it's cool stuff, but I do not have high hopes that it's ever gonna be.
I
a
said
thing. I am incredibly
I like
dubious.
talking about
Even-
it, but I really have no idea. Like, it's way beyond me.
yeah,
Like even
Well,
theorizing some
even
of this stuff.
Alcubierre. Yeah, even the guy that came up with the ship himself, Alcubierre, he is skeptical. He says he doesn't think that these kinds of things will be possible ever, or maybe in 100 years, kind of thing.
So he designed it,
Like,
and he doesn't.
he's
even
very
believe it?
skeptical that he doesn't think that it's really like feasible. He has expressed skepticism himself, yeah, but it's kind of like, you know, what if it were feasible? How would it be feasible? And the way he describes makes sense according to Einstein's relativity. Like, it technically doesn't violate that. It just requires some crazy constraints
Yeah.
and things that we have not discovered how to do yet.
always questions.
But
Hopefully, and once we've answered all the questions, then what else is there?
So is that like the whole point
Yeah.
behind like the? Because that's not actually like having a. Well, I guess that would actually be having like a warp drive, right? Like Star Trek.
It's warping space. Yeah, I mean, I guess I would consider warp drive. I mean, Star Trek generally they go through subspace, so they like actually tear through our layer of space, go into a layer underneath space, which you can travel from one point to another faster in.
I mean, in some ways, that's kind of the idea of a traversable wormhole, though.
Yeah, see, that was my
To a
next
certain degree.
question was what's that, you know, the difference between that and wormholes, because that's another way of fast travel, I guess.
They're very closely related, basically.
Mhm.
Like, you kind of need the same thing to do a wormhole. You need the negative energy and all that, or figuring out some way to do it with crazy amounts of positive energy. But yeah, they're basically the same thing. When you're reading stuff about Alcubierre drives, it's the same talk about traversable wormholes. It's the same types of energy and inertial frames that you need to be able to accomplish it. It is pretty crazy that Star Trek called it the warp drive, and that they formalized that idea before Alcubierre even came up with his like warp drive thing, his Alcubierre drive. Such a cool name.
So it was
Warp
based on
drive.
reality or possible reality.
Or like Alcubierre's theory is based off science fiction, kind of, maybe.
Yeah,
Not
that-
really. That's not
There
really
you
what it
go.
is. But like it. Apparently, the warp drive term originated in John W. Campbell's 1931 science fiction novel Islands of Space, but then Star Trek uses it as well.
Because what else? What other names did you have for it? For faster than light travel, you had light speed, right? That was the Star Wars thing.
Super luminal.
Yeah. You had what? Ludicrous speed. Ludicrous speed was
Spaceballs.
Spaceballs.
Well, that was above
That was beyond light speed. Yeah.
Yeah, and Star Wars was not light speed. It was
The Kessel.
hyperdrives. They used
Yeah,
hyperdrive.
hyperdrive.
to- Basically, it was going into a wormhole. I think is most equatable to Star Wars.
But what did they? Hyperspace. They called it hyperspace. That's what it was.
Yeah, they go into
They put
hyperspace using
okay.
a hyperdrive. Yeah.
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 And then you get all the little flashy like lights and stuff, and you get sucked into a thing.
vortex almost. Yeah. Tunnel, if you will.
Which like people always like criticize the whole running the Kessel Run in 13.2 parsecs or whatever,
Well,
like because
12
parsecs aren't
parsecs.
a unit of time.
It was 12 parsecs.
They're
All right, come on now. That we can
The-
know.
Yeah.
So what is a parsec?
It's a unit of distance, not a unit of time.
Time. Yeah.
Yeah, so people always criticize that, like that doesn't make sense. How could you do it? Blah 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 blah. Like it would have to be a unit of time because of how he talks about it. But if it's really a wormhole and they're kind of like mapping these kinds of wormholes out to some degree, then it could be, they're so good at using the Millennium Falcon to actually cut corners, so to speak, and thus shorten the path
Yeah,
through the
that
wormhole to
many
get there.
sectors.
And
to
so
do
Yeah.
it.
saying it took only 12. Yeah, so maybe it takes the average person 13.2 parsecs, but they're fucking good enough that they can send the Millennium Falcon, and the Millennium Falcon's a good enough ship that it can make the run in merely 12, taking all the stress that it takes to do so and all.
Maybe there's like anomalies in the path that they take that other ships weren't able to get around while being in warp space or hyperspace or whatever, something like that. I could see where
Yeah.
you're going. They literally have to
They're-
travel less distance. So he's saying, I traveled it in 12.
The-
Yeah, gotcha. That makes a lot of sense.
There
Josh.
literally is. Yeah, like there's even with there's an actual map for this, because we played like a D&D campaign type thing that was a Star Wars one, and we actually like looked at the galaxy map and stuff, and they had the Kessel Run and all that stuff, and there was like a meteorite or like asteroid belt type thing around that area, so that it was like a pretty treacherous zone. So it totally fits the lore that like, yeah, they're trying to find these really dangerous but quick paths through space.
Pretty cool. To think that, there's different paths you could take that literally take you different lengths of physical distance to get to the same spot from the same start. That's interesting.
Did
Yeah.
Did any of you see that movie, Wing Commander?
Can't say I have. Nope.
No.
Because that was their version of jumping great distances was done using what I guess quasars or black holes.
Hmm. Oh, is that a video game?
It is a video game, but there's a movie based on it. Yes. Not
Okay.
Not that it was a scientifically based anything, but that was how they would travel great distance. They had certain points that they had to jump at.
Kind of like in Guardians of the Galaxy. You have different points in space where you can traverse through windows into other points in space.
Right. It was like set points that they had to like navigate through these like I think they called them quasars.
Played a game, or played a couple games that are kind of like that. Even in a way, Star Trek game that I played was kind of like that, where you have to go to certain points in a system, and you go through these jump gates, the gates that will kind of propel you through space to a certain distance, So it allows you to travel from one system to another, and once you reach that system, then you have gates to go to other places,
Yeah. One of the things we don't know with, back to the Alcubierre drive, like even if you could build it and have that warp bubble, it could be creating energies that are just going to tear
We don't know what
everything to
it is.
shreds. You know, it's going to create enough energy. Yeah, you basically could be creating a star or a black hole or something in that region, and so you're just going to obliterate everything. There's even like a principle or like a conjecture that's like, we don't know it, but it's like basically quantum mechanics is probably going to step in the way at some point. Like if we tried to build one of these things, even though relativity says that it seems possible, quantum mechanics is going to step in at some point and be like, no, it's not possible. Whether that means you're basically just making a glorified bomb, or maybe there's some form of actual, you know, sending something through a wormhole. But in order to do so, you got to shred it down to its gluons and quarks. You know, you're not going to be able to piece that back together into real normal matter.
Yet, anyways.
again.
Beaming.
Yeah.
Replication technology, man.
Well, but
beaming is actually part of the
that's the
replication
conjecture.
technology.
Yeah.
When you can take matter and break it down to energy, and then energy into matter, then you have teleportation technology. As long as you can
I mean, we
reassemble
already.
that matter. Sorry.
That it's the as long as that's the hard part. Like we already can create energy from not from nothing, but you can create. Sorry, I said that wrong. We can create mass not from nothing, but with enough energy. If you send if you send like hydrogen particles, like in CERN at the LHC at 99.9% of the speed of light, and then you speed it up more, you're going to get to a point where you're actually adding in mass. You're getting that's literally going to weigh more because you can't add. You need an infinite amount of energy to get those to move the speed of light. You're never going to do that. So at some point, you start actually creating matter from it, and it you know, it's crazy.
Which is another one of the fundamental problems with light speed, if you will, is traveling at the speed of light. Is the closer you reach speed of light, the more mass you actually seem to have. The harder it is,
Yeah,
basically.
the thing holding
it's
you back.
infinitely harder the closer you get to the speed of light to go that fast.
Yeah.
What about stopping?
Oh, you're just screwed now. I
Do
mean,
you just come out
dent
of
in
the
your
thing
helmet,
and
man.
Just you shut the drive off and then poof, you're just there.
No. Well, because of the way the universe works, you know, an object in motion stays in motion, so
Right.
you'll
but
just keep going
Are you
forever
in motion
unless
with
you
the
have
thing,
enough
with
power.
the expanding behind you and the condensing in front of you, and your little flat pane thing that you were talking about?
Well,
is
I
it
think
actually moving, or is it stuck inside something that is moving?
well, the bubble
The warp
itself
bubble
is moving through space, and you are technically, from what the way I understand it, your ship, the engines are on, and you are moving. I mean, you're not really moving, but you are causing the space underneath you basically to move.
You know,
If that makes sense.
ship in
I
a
mean,
bottle.
in a sense you are moving, but the space is flat as far as we know it. All of our space around us is flat, but you know, you can curve space time with energy and stuff like that, and it's kind of doing that on the surface of this bubble, but inside the bubble it's perfectly flat, outside the bubble it's perfectly flat. But the bubble itself would be translating. It would be an inertial frame that is moving. So technically you're moving, but the space that you're perceiving is itself flat. You're just warping the space right around you so that you're kind of slipping through. It seems like you're kind of slipping through space, I guess. But I guess to us as outside observers, we would still see a thing move across the sky. Does that make sense?
Right, but you wouldn't like see it clearly enough to know that it was a field around a object.
It would look probably
I mean, you
very
could-
similar to a streak of light going.
It
across
would
the
probably
sky.
look like a shooting star, I would think, or something. Maybe faster than that.
Well, it depends on how far away it is from you too.
What
Like-
light you're seeing
like we
reflected
can
off
see-
of it, you know.
Like we've observed jets from pulsars that are like, you know, thousands, you know, hundreds of thousands, millions of light years away, that seem to be, the jets themselves seem to be almost breaking the speed of light in some weird ways, but not quite. But they tend to be traveling really close to the speed of light, and we can measure that from way far away, you know, and we can see just even that little bit of movement in the sky, we can say, hey, that's close to light speed. And you can still see the definition in it because you're so far away. So if we saw like one of these warp bubbles out by Jupiter, we could still probably shine a telescope in on it and try to see what the warp bubble actually looks like, which is what we'd be seeing. We probably would see the warp bubble and not the actual spaceship, unless it was somehow transparent.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's the other thing. It's like, can you see through it? Like if say you were in space and you had like if you had two of these things like warping at the same time and they were next to each other, like roughly headed to the same direction, but so they didn't crash.
Not exactly parallel, so they're like this.
Huh? No, I mean like absolutely parallel, like not where they would eventually intersect and kill everybody, but like would you be able to look out the window of the ship and be like, oh, I see the other ship?
Yeah, it's a really good question.
I mean, would it look like you're both just stationary? Would it just look like you're sitting there?
I think so.
Possibly, yeah. Given inertial frame of reference.
Translucent or not? Yeah, perspective kind of answers that question.
To kind of just ask that question again, when you're riding in a train,
relativity.
You can imagine yourself moving through the world, or you can imagine you're in a standing still train and the world is moving by you. You can kind of flip your perspective at any time. Sometimes it throws you off, like if you're at a stop sign and then you don't feel the movement. You feel like you're sitting still, but then you see that and you're like, shit, am I moving or are they moving forward? Yeah, exactly.
Yep. No, I do that. Like semis do that to me. If I'm sitting next to a semi and it's creeping, and I'm like, I just feel like I'm moving for a second. I'm like, oh no, my foot's still on the brake. We're good.
That's quite literally perspective because you can't see enough of the object or the surrounding around it to make the connection in your brain.
Right.
Who was I talking with? One of my friends about how the brain is such an evil thing. It makes us see things and not see things that are always there, if you will, like the nose on your own face. You always see it. It's always there. It's always in your sight line, but you only see it if you concentrate on it because your brain is like, it's always there. I know it's there. I don't need to show you all the time. So there are other instances like when you're in a car and that happens. You could be looking, around and not see anything when you're backing out of your driveway, which you do every day, and something be in a blind spot or something, or not even a blind spot. You just glance over and it doesn't look like anything's there, but your brain's just showing you what you want to see.
Same thing like they say if you hang upside down for, I mean, I don't know how long of a period of time it is, probably more than like the blood can handle, but like eventually you will stop seeing stuff upside down, like your vision will correct itself, or your brain will compensate for it, so you start seeing correctly again, even though you're hanging upside down.
There are glasses that do that. They're like mirror glasses that will flip. Yeah. Because technically our eyes do that anyway. The image that lands on our retina is upside down because of how a lens works. And so our brains have to flip it right side up. But our brains are so plastic at that ability that if you put those glasses on, it only takes like 24 hours or something crazy like that for our brains to like rewire in a sense and be like, no, actually, which way is up and down. Basically 24 hours later, you'll go from reaching up here, you'll reach up here to grab your glass of water to now knowing that you can grab it right here. Even though you see it up here, you've now corrected that to reach right there.
Actually, it's very funny
crazy that our brains can do that.
A very real world explanation of that is the XY axis on video games and stuff. How some people play with the up is down and down is up, or vice versa. Yeah. It's just how do you want to play? How is it going to make most sense to you in your brain?
Yeah. And that varies depending on if I'm playing an FPS or if I'm like flying.
Doing a driving game or flying, Yep.
Well, driving not so much because you're not really doing up and down, but but flying games, flying sims, and whatnot are absolutely. It's like totally different for me which one I want. So, but my normally when you pull back on the stick of an airplane, you go up, right? You ascend. You push down. Forward. However, when I'm playing an FPS, if I just feel like if I went to go like move my arm up, that would be a natural up to me. So
exactly.
It's weird, especially if you're playing on a controller that has a joystick. On mouse and keyboard, it's a little bit different. It's probably easier to compensate for, but it's just a natural motion to me. So forward is up when I'm like on the ground, and if I'm flying, back is up.
Yep.
Yeah.
About association up here.
Or
How-
down
how do
is
you
up, I guess I
associate
should
it?
say. But yeah.
Which,
And your brains
in
can
my
do that,
opinion,
like-
that's the correct association too. Because again, how you said logically, when you fly a plane, you pull back.
Yeah, but
When
that's
you
only
are-
because that's how they're designed, and I know that's how they're designed. If it was designed the
Exactly.
other
Yeah.
way, if pushing
Well-
down on the flight yoke of a plane ascended you, then that's what it would be.
Literally, all it is a control change. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really
Well,
all.
to change your perspective, like my buddy and I butted up against this when we were playing Fortnite last season. There was like they added planes, and I was much in your guys' camp where I'm like, well, the rudders do this, and so that it's much more intuitive for back to be up. But I don't think it was. You could switch it, you could invert it, but I think the default was the other way in the game. And my buddy was much more in tune with that. But if you think about it, if you think of the game as like the two-dimensional screen and how it moves, you're actually just telling that how to move rather than the plane
Your plane is
itself.
going
And
straight.
so
You're saying
it's
look
still
this
just
way,
as
that's all.
intuitive for them. Yeah. But if you think about how the actual screen is going to be moving directionally, then for some people it's more intuitive to be like, well, up means up then, because that means the screen's going to go up, rather than down. It's just interesting. The nose thing that you brought up was neat too, because I've heard that that's an issue with some people playing VR. That like just a simple act of not having a nose rendered in can be enough to like throw people's senses and get sick from it. Like
That's
that with a combination of other things, the motion and stuff. There's all kinds of reasons people can get sick, but it's disorienting because of a simple thing that it's so realistic, but no nose.
I hadn't heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah. I never heard
Yeah.
that either. So yeah.
Probably a much
Yeah.
less common thing, I would figure.
I also didn't know that like you always see your nose. I mean, I guess your eyes are capable of seeing all that, but I mean to actually see my nose, I have to look down. So, but I never knew that was just something
Well,
that
but
your
if you-
brain negated as it's pointless to have it there. Like, why am I looking at this thing all the time? It's always there. Like, I never knew that your brain like just deleted information like that.
It's where one of the like sayings comes from, or something like you wouldn't know something despite the nose on your face, or something like that. I don't know the exact saying, but that's kind of where that comes from. Is that it's always there, you always see it, but you never see it, kind of deal. It is very interesting, I think, but that's how the brain
You
can
can't
trick
see the forest. You can't see the forest for your nose. I think that's the saying.
What?
Well, it's you can't see the
Forest
forest
for
for
the
all
trees.
the trees or something. Yeah, I mean, but that's the idea.
And
Oh,
it-
is that what it actually is?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? You
Yeah,
got me
okay.
there. You got me there.
And I think the saying you were thinking of, Joe, is cut off your nose to spite your face.
Maybe, but
Like, just that's a saying. Like,
yeah.
being someone that would cut off their own nose to spite their face. Like, it's stupid. But yeah, I don't know. I've never heard that said any other way.
It might be what I'm thinking of. I could have sworn there was something slightly different, or the meaning was different than how that means. I don't know.
I mean, but the observation is absolutely true that we don't, our brains filter it out. We filter out all kinds of things. Like we have actual blind spots, but we don't see a hole in our vision. There's a spot in the back of our eye where the retinal nerve like connects to our eyes, and you can't see in that spot. It's a dead spot, but we don't see that dead spot. But there are optical illusions like the two hearts that if you like focus on the dot in the middle and you move them away from you, one of the hearts will disappear in one of your eyes, but you never notice that blind spot ever. Do you know, like, this kind of also reminds me of the whole seeing faces in like a tree bark kind of thing.
Imagery
that
and
whole
stuff,
phenomenon.
items in clouds, faces
Oh,
in tree
okay.
bark, that kind of stuff, right? There's a
Yeah.
specific
And
name
human
for
brains,
it too.
pareidolia.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
P-A-R, yeah, pareidolia. And our brains have a
P-A-R-W.
strong urge to do that.
Because it's trying to make sense out of what it's
Pareidolia, P-A-R-dolia.
Yeah.
The brain
Yeah.
doesn't like randomness. It wants to make a pattern. It wants to make something it can make sense out of and go, oh, that's a face. I know what that is. Yeah.
So that's why I saw a fish in the clouds the other day.
Basically,
More or less, yeah.
pattern recognition. It's also why we get fooled with things all the time. You know, we want to see patterns, but there's not always a pattern there. Even if it's like in the data of something. That's why it's good to have, you know, independent researchers checking on any given finding and not taking any one lab's output of research as like gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Because
But aren't
we
we
can
all
all be
humans and
fooled.
all our brains work the same way,
Even
so
the
wouldn't we all
smartest
be
human
looking for
being.
patterns?
Well, think about that. Do all of our
But
brains
you're
work
looking
the
for
same
a
way?
different pattern.
I mean, they all work on principle the same way, yes. But do they all actually work the same way? A savant who can tell you every zip code in the country is wired a little differently than me or you, you know?
They just got a good memory.
Yeah, but also a biologist knows different things about the world than a physicist does. But they
Because
might be
they
studying
learned it.
similar things, but they might. Yeah, what's your point?
But I mean, that's not really how the like.
Be-
I know what I know because I learned it, which is different from what both of you guys know because we all learn different stuff. Not necessarily how the functionality of our brains work differently.
But they don't have to, like, that. Those are the differences. Like, if you have learned different things, then your experiences form who you are, what you're gonna say, what you're gonna do, the ideas you're gonna come up with as solutions.
So then you're just talking
are
about
all
going to
be impacted by the things you've learned in your life.
Not the fact that a newborn baby and a newborn baby, they have different brains.
I'm not really sure your point.
They might have different brains.
They do have
might
different
even
brains.
they might even be
Well,
again
the way they-
wired differently, but they are going
to
to work
explain.
the same. And the fact that our brains fire an electrical signal from neuron to neuron, and that's how we have memories, that's how we have function, and that's how everything works is our brain one neuron to another. That's how everybody's brain works. Now, how fast that neuron fires, how fast they receive the signal, what order they fire in, what pathways the signal takes, that all affects who you are, how you perceive things, your ability to interpret data, all of that. So, as with Scott's example of a physicist and a biologist, yeah, they may very well work the same way. They may both be very intelligent, but their brains do not quite give them the same information about the data that they have. They might both see the same object and interpret the data differently. And that's the difference in the human brain, is that it all works the same physically, but on a less physical level, on how you're going to interpret it, is all very affected by the actual working of the brain, which neuron fires and which neuron receives that signal, kind of deal.
So the same thing is learning by doing and learning by like reading and left and right brain kind of stuff, whatever, more dominant sides, all that developed process.
Well, the whole left and right brain thing is kind of debunked.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
didn't
like
have
what
enough
Joe's saying is
examples.
absolutely. Yeah, no, I think I got what you're saying, but yeah, like we all kind of still have our own different perspectives that are in some cases soft wired, like what we've learned, but there are also hardwired differences, for lack of a better term. You know, our brains aren't really wired, but you know, the whole different optical illusions kind of serve as evidence for that. Some people see a face but some people see a vase, you know, in that classic vase illusion. Some people can change in between both, and there's, you know, all kinds of illusions where some people might not see a thing that somebody else might see. And it's the, you know, we all have similar brains that fire neurons similarly, but like, you know, there's all kinds of reasons why someone's interpretation might be slightly different.
What's that ink blot test thing where they show you the things and They ask you what you
Rorschach.
see.
Yeah,
Rorschach,
Rorschach
yeah.
stuff.
So like that kind of stuff and people's different
Like Watchmen.
interpretations of of blots on paper.
Yeah, that's the exact idea. Same spot, two different people give you two different answers is what they see.
I just must not be a very creative person because I'm just like, it's a disaster. It's a mess. It's like,
Looks like an oil spill.
somebody spilled some shit on some paper.
But I mean, even those answers could give you insight to the way that the person's mind works. I mean, that may tell that person, well, he's not very creative in that sense where he's going to see a butterfly out of an ink blot, but maybe he does see something else. What does he relate it to? Like me was saying the oil spill thing. Well, why do I automatically go there? Have I been traumatized by an oil spill? I mean, not necessarily, not
I don't
specifically,
know,
not
Joe, have
generally,
you?
but I mean, I'm just saying, it could give you another way to dip into somebody's psyche. Even if you don't see an item there, what do you see and why?
Next thing you know, Joe's gonna have a story
I
about how
gotta
he
say,
learned how to change oil and someone tricked him and like he got covered in it and like drank a whole bunch of it or some shit.
like I gotta say that all sounds nice, but like I think the whole Rorschach thing has been relegated to not science, basically being pseudoscience. There may be ways to kind of get out what you're saying. Counseling is kind of that, getting in how someone thinks about something, but being like, here's an ink splot, like I think it's way too easy for someone to just try to falsify it or
Well,
like
yeah, I mean,
heckle
not that
it.
I believe that it
And
actually proved anything.
I don't know if that's
but-
really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it actually like did anything, but it was a thing, and people would show the ink blot, and they'd be like, "Oh, that's a butterfly," or
Yeah.
"Oh, that's a cat," or "That's a dog," or, that was a thing.
Yeah,
People
they
did
actually
do that.
did it.
Yeah.
But as you said about the
Yeah.
falsifying, though, Scott, the whole thing about that is that if you really wanted to do that, nothing is going to help. Because, I mean, if somebody's counseling you, sitting you down, and not showing you these Rorschach tests and actually asking you questions about yourself, if you don't want to be there and you don't want to help, it's not going to help because you're just going to lie to them anyways, so forth, so on.
Well, what
So,
if
I
it
mean,
was court
again, it
ordered?
all does color, by if you're chances are you're not going to be putting yourself through that if you don't want to be there.
If it was court ordered, if you were told you had to go see a psychiatrist,
Sure,
you may not want to be
but
there, but you have to be.
None of that means that the Rorschach test does work, though.
No.
Like
yeah, I'm not saying it does.
unfortunately, it just doesn't. I know, but I think since we're talking about this, I am a skeptic, and I want people to be more aware of all these things, that are good tools for like cutting your teeth on getting, building your skeptical chops for knowing when another thing comes about, like the what is it, the personality test, like the INTJ, I forget what that's called. That's pseudoscience too. This is a good way to kind of extrapolate from that to those kinds of things that we see all the time on the internet. People love those kinds of things. And if you can use this as an example to be like, the Rorschach test has no evidence to show that it has helped anybody, basically, or that it's gotten,
But I mean,
that
it's
it's
no
basically
difference.
useless.
It's no different than
then-
what do you call it? Like the Facebook quizzes on what Crayola color are you? It's like,
Yeah.
who gives a shit?
Yeah. Yeah, seriously.
Like, I don't care what Disney character I am.
Yeah.
The
It's
stuff
kind of all,
Yeah,
all
exactly.
very colored, yeah,
Yeah.
if you will.
And sometimes one question, if you change the way you answered one question, you might go from Princess Jasmine to Princess Ariel. You might be two totally different princesses.
Yeah. Exactly.
With
You
one
could have,
question.
like split personalities there. That's
Yeah.
for a deep dive.
Yeah. Apparently, we're getting all into psychiatry now.
It's one of my most favorite things,
I-
actually. I love the relationship to why, like, figuring out why people act certain ways and do certain stuff. So
Idiots,
had a-
that's why.
I had a very fun time through high school and the little bit of the 2 years of college or whatever. That it was very, very fun. I love that. It's like I didn't really necessarily believe in it as any kind of well, I wouldn't. Like I said, I never really would have called it a science, but I studied it for a short amount of time just because I thought it was enjoyable, because I like to kind of tear stuff like that apart. But the yeah, just trying to like people trying to figure out why other people do things has always been interesting to me, and it hardly ever pans out the way they want it to or the way they think it does.
It's so hard to study. Not impossible, but there's
No.
so many variables to control
There's
for
so
that
many
it's hard
facets.
to isolate
It's
a
great.
single variable. Yeah.
I take it your light died there, Joe.
Yeah, it died
Oh yeah.
a while ago.
Well, that's better now. At least I was like, Joe has no face anymore.
Why?
I mean,
Well, now you do.
speaking of it,
A second ago you didn't.
speaking of idiots, like sometime we should talk about the Dunning-Kruger effect. Uh, maybe that's a good topic for a future episode. Yeah, well, it's definitely something worth looking into. Uh, it's I mean, I could try to give like a one sentence summation of what it is, but it would definitely be oversimplifying it. Basically,
I'll look into it.
people that know, yeah. Well, I guess for anybody out there listening, the Dunning-Kruger effect is basically that people that don't know as much in a certain topic tend to be more confident in it than relative to a researcher that is maybe an expert in that topic. Their confidence would actually be lower relatively, but it's tricky. Like the technically an expert's confidence is often higher than the idiot's confidence, but the difference is what you're kind of looking at there. The difference between how much an expert actually knows and their confidence level is smaller than in the unknowing people that think they know a lot more when actually the scores they're actually getting when tested on a thing are way lower. The gap is way bigger.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean,
So
just
Data
people
set,
seem
yeah,
to-
exactly.
People seem to think like they
The,
watch a YouTube video or read an article and they know everything there is to know about a particular subject, but that's just people.
Yeah, there's no getting around it. We all fall prey to the Dunning-Kruger effect. We are all part of it in some way, even if we don't realize it. Uh, it's not just idiots being super confident. It's even like and it's not just in general. It's actually about specific things, like an expert in cancer research. You might study that, and then how someone might be more confident, in their online Wikipedia research than, say, a doctor who kind of is really skeptical. They know all the ins and outs of the research, and they might know where some of the things went wrong. And so their confidence in their own results is maybe still good, but less than the gap in confidence between the person that Wikipedia'd everything that's like, I know this stuff causes cancer, even though they
you
actually
have,
know very little.
You have your doctor and you have your WebMD.
Yeah, exactly. Basically. I mean, it's a really tricky thing that I am, definitely mischaracterizing to some degree because it's so complicated and nuanced. We really could have a whole episode about it. So
It makes
anybody out
perfect
there
sense
that
to
thinks
me.
I totally fucked it up, yeah, well, feel free to comment, down below if you think I
Okay,
totally
well,
fucked it up and
fine.
you have a better description of
I'll
Dunning-Kruger
talk
effect.
about it then.
No, I mean, I know the term. I've never really paid too much attention to it, but yeah, I generally thought it was around that line. I actually thought that it was like for sure, it really is kind of difficult to explain simply. I don't think, God, but I didn't know it was like a relationship between I thought it was literally just the fact that people think they know more than what they actually do on a general basis, just because, like I said, because they read an article or something and they don't have all the facts and they just go, oh, well, this is what this said. Joe, you're very dark again. Yeah, this is what this said and I'm going to go with it, as opposed to the professional that knows all the facets and everything that can possibly, intersect or change this, the but and ifs of a particular topic or profession, that they would be less confident about it because they know all the variables or know about all the variables and what can change and whatnot. I thought that's what that was, but I don't know. I could have.
Yeah, I mean, it's really complicated because people often misdescribe what it is, too. It's kind of a funny little meta thing, right? Like,
But then again,
trying to
all I
explain the
did was
Dunning-Kruger
read
effect
an
is
internet
really
article
hard,
on
especially if you're not an expert in it.
Yeah, I read
Yeah,
about it on
exactly.
the internet, so
Same here. Like,
I'm not an
See,
expert.
now that Rob read, I was gonna say, now that Rob read the article, he thinks he's an expert, and
Yeah.
here's a perfect example of what you're talking
No,
about.
that's it. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
I
yeah.
preface this with I don't know. I'm not sure.
Based on my research,
my understanding of this. This is what I do all day for work. It's just that, it's.
me too, actually. Based on my understanding,
tell you
this
how
is how
I
I
see
understand
this.
it from my research, in my experience. That's all I do all day.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. But I'm going to call it there. This is a long one today. This is pretty good. So, everybody, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.
Thank you.
Adios.
Bye.